I tell the recruits the same thing every cohort, and every cohort thinks I am being dramatic for effect. I am not. I am being precise. There is a difference between a warning and a performance, and most of what passes for caution in this fleet is performance. Officers reciting the forbidden zone briefing, the way a child recites a prayer they no longer believe. I believed it once too. Then I stopped believing it, and that was the mistake that cost me 11 of the finest crew I ever served beside. You know the boundary. Every cadet does. The charts go gray at the edge of human space, and the gray is labeled, in the old cartographer's hand, as nothing more than absence. No survey data. No resolved coordinates. Just the word uncatalogued, stamped across a blank the size of a sector. We were taught that the humans made it that way, that they burned the instruments of anyone who looked too closely, that the silence was theirs to keep. I believed that too, for a long time. I no longer think the humans built that silence alone. I think they found it already there, and chose, wisely, to leave it standing. My survey wing was assigned a single ruin world 11 years ago, a rust-colored moon 2 systems short of the boundary. Officially outside the forbidden mark by a margin our cartographer assured us was generous. Old instruments had picked up a structure on its surface, a vast skeletal lattice, half buried, that did not match any known architecture. Human or otherwise, Command wanted to know what it was before deciding whether the boundary needed redrawing. I volunteered my wing because I was young enough to want the kind of fame that comes from answering a question no one else had managed to answer, and old enough that I should have known better. We found the lattice exactly where the old instruments said it would be, not a building, a spine, a rib cage the size of a city block, vast curved members of some dark fused material rising out of the rust sand, like the hull of something that had died trying to take off and never managed it. My structural officer, Tamsa Vey, said it reminded her of a wing folded wrong, locked mid-collapse, frozen at the instant of falling. I did not like the comparison. I liked it less when our long-range scans came back, showing no metal in the lattice, at all. Not alloy, not composite, nothing our instruments recognized as built. The fused material read, on every test we ran, closer to bone than to hull plate, which meant either our instruments were wrong, or the thing that died on that moon had been the size of a starship and had never needed one. The lander's pilot, a quiet survey hand named Auric Dahl who had flown longer than anyone else in my wing, refused to set down inside the lattice's shadow, even with the moon's single weak sun still up. He said the shadow felt occupied, the way an empty house sometimes feels occupied before you have any reason to think so, and he asked permission to keep the lander a half-kilometer clear. I granted it without argument, which should have told me something about my own instincts before I overrode them. I liked the lattice less still when Tamsa found the first marker stones a half-day's walk from it, human in shape, human in proportion, but carved with a single repeated glyph none of our linguists could place. Not a word. A warning shape. The same mark, over and over, facing outward from the lattice like a perimeter of headstones turned the wrong way, planted by hands that had clearly meant for something to stay where it lay. We logged it. We should have left it logged. Instead, Tamsa asked for 48 hours to excavate the base of the lattice, to find out what kind of creature, or vessel, we still argued over which, had left bones that size on a moon no human settlement had ever claimed. I gave her the 48 hours. I am the one who gave her the 48 hours. The first day was routine, sample collection, soil cores, slow, careful work in heavy suits against thin, cold air. The second day the markers stopped facing outward. I want to be precise about that, because precision is the only thing I can offer the recruits in place of comfort. The marker stones, which Tamsa had mapped and photographed and logged in fixed positions the day before, had rotated, not been moved, rotated, each one, the same small number of degrees, all facing now toward the lattice, instead of away from it, as if whatever they had been built to ward off the moon had finished, and the stones no longer needed to keep their backs to it. Tamsa's last transmission was 11 words long, sent at an hour, when she should have been resting in the lander. I will not repeat the words to recruits who have not yet earned the right to carry them, the way I did not earn it until I had no choice. I will say only that her voice did not break, and that is the part I have never been able to explain to anyone who was not there. She did not sound afraid at the end. She sounded like someone who had just understood something very large and had decided, with what little time remained to her, to spend it saying so clearly rather than screaming. What I found, when the silence from the dig site ran past every safety window we had, was not a battle. There was no wreckage to speak of, no scorch, no proof of the kind a tribunal could weigh. There was a perimeter, our own perimeter lights, still running on standby power, throwing their pale circles over ground that was simply, completely undisturbed. No bodies, no equipment failure consistent with any known cause. The excavation pit Tamsa had dug at the base of the lattice was filled back in, smooth, packed, as though no one had ever opened it at all. The marker stones had finished rotating. Every one of them now faced the lattice directly, and every one of them had a fresh hairline crack running through the warning glyph, as if the warning itself had been used up. I pulled what remained of my wing off that moon inside the hour, and filed the report command did not want. I told them the lattice was not a structure and not a wreck. I told them it was a remnant of something that had been large enough, once, to leave bones, and patient enough, since, to leave markers, and that whatever had made the markers crack was not interested in territory or resources or conquest in any shape we had a word for. I told them the humans had not drawn the boundary around their own species alone. I told them the boundary might be older than the humans, and that the humans, whatever else they are, might simply be the most recent and most visible reason the rest of us have been given to stay on our own side of it. Command filed the report as inconclusive. They reassigned the moon's coordinates back to uncatalogued, where they remain to this day, and they promoted me, because a commander who brings home 10 of his 11 crew is, by the fleet's grim arithmetic, a success. I have never once felt like a success. I have felt, every year since, like a man who was permitted to leave a room that something else decided, for reasons of its own, not to follow him out of. Auric Dahl, the pilot who would not land in the lattice's shadow, retired the year after and would not speak of the moon again to anyone, including me, though I tried twice. The one time he came close, he told me only that he had counted the marker stones from the lander's viewport on the second day, out of nervous habit, and that the count had been one higher than the count Tamsa logged that morning. He never offered an explanation for the discrepancy, and I never asked him for one again. Some men carry their proof quietly, because the alternative is carrying it loudly, in a room full of officers who will write it down as fatigue. This is why I no longer perform the briefing. I do not tell new recruits to fear the humans because the humans are dangerous, though they likely are. I tell them to fear the blank places on the chart, because the humans did not make all of that blankness themselves. Something was there first, on a moon 2 systems short of any boundary anyone had bothered to draw, wearing a shape like a wing that never finished falling. It let one ship leave, it kept the rest, and it filled the hole back in so neatly that no tribunal could ever prove there had been a hole at all. When the recruits ask me, as they always do, whether I believe the humans know what shares their silence, I tell them the truth, which is that I no longer think it matters whose silence it is. I think the chart is gray for a reason older than any single warning, and that the wisest thing any of us will ever do is let it stay gray, and walk past it, and never once ask it to explain itself.